Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji, Dandavat Pranam.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji, Dandavat Pranam.
So we start now.
Ji.
Ajnanatimirandhasya Jnananjanashalakaya Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Krishnaya Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Krishna Shunyavadi Paschati Dishtare
Jai
Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Dvaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaur Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare. We are doing text 19 today. Or
19 to
19. Yeah. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo
Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Kvachitcha duhsahena kayabhyantar vahinina grahita saraha swakutumbaya krudhyati.
Kvachit Chadvasa Sahena Ayabhyantara Vahina Grihata Saraha Swa Kutumbaya Krudyati. Ali Prabhu?
Yes, please.
Hare Krishna. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace Swami Prabhupada. Sometimes, due to bodily hunger and thirst, the conditioned soul becomes so disturbed that he loses his patience and becomes angry with his own beloved sons, daughters, and wife. Thus, being unkind to them, he suffers all the more. Purport. Srila Vidyapati Thakura sang Tatala Saikate Vari Bindu Sama Sutamita Ramani Samaje. The happiness of family life is compared to a drop of water in the desert. No one can be happy in family life. According to Vedic civilization, one cannot give up the responsibilities of family life. Today, everybody is giving up family life by divorce. This is due to a miserable condition experienced in the family. Sometimes, due to misery, one becomes very hardened towards his affectionate sons, daughters, and wife. This is but part of the blazing fire of the forest of material life. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. See, Bhaktivinoda Thakur says that, my Lord, I forgot you and now I am suffering in this material world. Actually, this material world is a place which is meant to teach lesson to a living entity. Material world is not a place where one is going to derive any happiness. It's a place where lessons are learned. So one should think that any object which is seemingly giving us happiness is actually designed by material nature to give us misery. So we must be extremely cautious. As soon as we see that we are deriving some happiness from some material object for the material senses, then we should become extremely cautious. That's why the saintly souls actually renounce all the materialistic activities. They live in the forest, they renounce family life, they do not maintain attachment to anything. So the point is that, we see sometimes saintly souls like Bhaktivinoda Thakur or Srila Prabhupada himself who lived in Grihastha ashram. But we must understand that they are Nitya Siddhas. They're Acharyas. They're Nitya Siddhas. That means they are not bound by material conditions. So therefore, seemingly though they are in the material world, they are not really. But on the other hand, if we try to derive happiness from this world, we will meet a lot of misery. As Srila Prabhupada writes in his Vrindavan Bhajan, that I had so many relatives, beloved mother, father, son, beloved mother, father, uncles, aunts, and now all I am left is just a list of names. Can anyone tell me where they are now? So that is material happiness. So actually in the course of material affairs also one experiences so much distress. Actually we see there is so much of distress, children do not listen to us, or sometimes the elders are not acting properly. People are not taking their responsibilities seriously, and we are suffering so much. But when these relationships break, then they become a source of even greater misery. So in this way, material nature is designed to frustrate us. So anyone who's deriving happiness in this world will eventually meet frustration, either in terms of a broken relationship or in terms of death. So one has to be very careful. So this material life is actually compared to a drop of water. So actually, if you're walking if you're very thirsty and I give you a very small amount of water, like one sip, you will feel even more miserable. So therefore, it is advised that a wise person should avoid any materialistic happiness. One should surrender to Krishna as soon as possible. And that's why Krishna is also saying, man manaha bhava mad bhakto. Always think of me. So what does that really mean? Always thinking of Krishna means that we are not thinking of anything else. As soon as we think of something else, then we are not thinking of Krishna. Nikate stha maya tara chapatiya dhare. That means we are thinking of Maya. So any object which is not directly related to Krishna or his service is actually Maya. And that will become a source of misery. Hare Krishna. Yes, any questions or comments here? Continue, text 20. Sa eva punar nidra jagar grihito andhe tamasi magna shunyaranya iva shete nanyat kinchana veda shava iva paviddha.
Sa eva punyard jagat grihito ante tastamsi magra shunyaranya iva shete nanyatik kinchana vedashav evapavid. Mary Prabhuji.
Yes, please.
Thank you, Ji. Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada Ji ki jai. Translation. Sukadev Goswami continued speaking to Maharaj Parikshit. My dear king, sleep is exactly like a python. Those who wander in the forest of material life are always devoured by the python of sleep. Being bitten by this python, they always remain in the darkness of ignorance. They are like dead bodies thrown in the distant forest. Thus, the conditioned souls cannot understand what is going on in life. Purport. Material life means being fully absorbed in eating, sleeping, mating, and defending. Out of these, sleep is taken very seriously. While asleep, one completely forgets the objects of life and what to do. For spiritual realization, one should try to avoid sleep as much as possible. The Goswamis of Vrindavan practically did not sleep at all. Of course, they slept some, for the body requires sleep, but they slept only about 2 hours and sometimes not even that. They always engaged in spiritual cultivation. Nidrahara viharakadi vijitau. Following in the footsteps of Goswamis, we should try to reduce sleeping, eating, mating, and defending. Thank you, Ji. Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna. So actually, human being does not need ahara, nidra, bhaya, maithun. Of these, maithun is something which can be completely avoided. That's the principle of brahmacharya. Ahara, nidra, and bhaya. These three can also be avoided. One who surrenders completely to Krishna will naturally have no bhaya. That means he has no material possessions, and he does not even consider the body to be his own. So there is no bhaya. Then the question only remains of sleeping and eating. So ahara and nidra. So even that has to be minimized. So Krishna is saying that a yogi should have everything balanced. That means one should eat just about enough to keep the body and soul together, and one should sleep enough just to give rest to body. And that's it. So Srila Prabhupada was sleeping actually half an hour a day, sometimes not even that. Goswamis were not sleeping practically at all. All the time they were translating books and discussing the scriptures. But ideally speaking, one should sleep between 4 to 6 hours. More than that is ignorance. More than that increases ignorance of the body. So actually Nidra is actually practically death. Srila Prabhupada says that, we die every evening because we have no idea what is going to happen after sleep. After sleep, we are in dreams and we have no control over our dreams. We just see anything. that literally, actually, that's an indication of our state of mind also, what we see in our dreams. So whatever type of dreams we are seeing, we should understand that these modes are influencing us, and we should try to get out of those emotions and those kind of feelings. We should try to cultivate feelings in Krishna consciousness. That's the way to escape this material nature. So, and that can be done only when one eats very little. If one eats very sumptuous meal or one eats a lot of meal, then one will become entangled. One will have to sleep more. Like Srila Prabhupada explains in one of his conversations, that in the West, people drink alcohol, people eat a lot of meat. So to digest that, they need to drink alcohol. And then, because they have so much of passionate energy, then they indulge in sex life. And that is the animalistic nature of the life in the West. So now, of course, India is also becoming like that. But the point is, one has to avoid this kind of lifestyle. So one should eat very little. If one eats very little, one will naturally have less need for sleep. And also one more thing, one should not indulge in heavy physical exercise. We see sometimes that devotees also take to activities like, mountain climbing or marathon running or heavy cycling or sports. So any activity which raises our breathing rate is actually in the mode of passion, and that's dangerous because it is reducing our lifespan. So in modern medical science, though they may say that exercise is good for the body, but the kind of exercise which increases your breathing rate is not generally considered very good. So Prabhupada used to prescribe maximum, wrestling as an exercise for brahmacharis. But other than that, Srila Prabhupada himself used to walk. So walking and doing physical chores at home, that is good exercise. One need not indulge in heavy sports like mountain climbing or cycling or stuff like that, because they are actually reducing our lifespan. This is very valuable lifespan, which is actually meant for remembering Krishna. Hare Krishna. Yes. Any questions or comments here?
Hare Krishna Prabhupada Pranam.
Dandavat Pranam. Yes.
This very verse, talk about sleep and all that thing. There is a mention that Madhvacharya, he went for sannyas when he was only 1 year old. So I want to know, you see, these are the things, must be there spiritual people, they could do anything. How to believe it? Earlier, Dhruv Maharaj and Prahlad Maharaj, 5 years. Oganath Muni gave them blessings and they did it and all that. But a person of 1 year who doesn't even know what is around, how could he get up and through the jungles he walks away for sannyas? How to believe this thing? How to make other people believe this thing?
Well, some things are not meant to be preached as such. See, life is a continuum. Life continues. It's not that we have taken birth now and this is the only life where we have knowledge. So these personalities, they are born from Purva Sanskaras, they are acharyas. So these acharyas, they are already liberated souls. They don't need to follow our rules and regulations. They are born with this knowledge already. So at the age of Adi Shankara, he took sannyas at the age of 5 or 6, I think. So it's not that these personalities need to learn somewhere and then take brahmacharya or sannyas vrat like us. So they are meant to preach this message of the Lord. They are already born with this, and by their own instructions, like Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, at the age of 6, he started August Assembly. And every member of the assembly had to promise Naishtik Brahmacharya for the rest of his life. So these are mystical activities. We can't really understand. Not mystical, very mystical, because Bhagavad Gita, Krishna is saying, Yam Yam Vapi Smaran Bhavam. So in the previous life, if one is completely self-realized, in this birth also he'll be self-realized. Like Shukdev Goswami, he was completely self-realized. He didn't even see his mother and father. So you can say that he took sannyas practically at birth itself. So these things are not to be understood from material calculations. So better not to preach about these things.
Exactly.
These are great personalities, they are what they are.
That's what, when he taught in today's world, now we are so polluted. We don't accept what we are doing right now. How can one believe these things? You're right, I think these things should not be much quoted among the innocent people, also ignorant people. Because people find very difficult to believe this thing.
Yes.
The person who spoke to it is a very elevated spiritual person.
Yeah, so he's just an elevated soul. We have to understand that, and that's it.
Yeah, that's exactly. That's the only way to say, yes, they elevated people in their own way. Because he says, 1 year got up and went through the jungle and this thing, and there was clothes were putting on, there was a wild animal. Naturally, in jungle, the wild animal has to be there. And all. But question is, in present day era, we are asking the people to believe it. They may be foolish, but they will laugh at us. He says, then why did he take birth at all? He could have continued the previous life itself. I would have happened almost at the age of 12 or 14 years. Maharaj, kya naam hai apne? Then Maharaj was speaking Bhagavatam.
Sukadeva Goswami.
That he just walked away. It's okay. He was about 12 or 14. I'm going. They're perfectly all right. But believing that 1 year boy doing these things, it will be very difficult for anyone to digest it. Unless.
So we don't speak these things.
We should not.
They are not meant to be spoken.
Exactly. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Yes. So we continue text 21.
Yeah.
Kadachit bhagna mana damstro durjana danda shukair alabdha.
Kadachit bhagan mano
damstro durjana danda sukair
suvikro
Nidrakshano vyathita hridaye nanu kshiyaman vigyano andha kupe andhavat patati.
Nidrakshano
Yathita hridayena
nukshiyamana vigyano
andhakupe andhavat patati.
Yes, please.
Hare Krishna. Translation purport by Sri Prabhupada. Sri Prabhupada ki jai. In the forest of the material world, the conditioned soul is sometimes bitten by enormous enemies, which are compared to serpent and other creatures. Through the tricks of the enemy, the conditioned soul falls from his precise position. Being anxious, he cannot even sleep properly. He thus becomes more and more unhappy, and he gradually loses intelligence and consciousness. In that state, he becomes almost perpetually like a blind man who has fallen into dark well of ignorance. Thank you, Prabhupada.
Hare Krishna. Okay. So material world means, one will have so many enemies. Adhi bhautik klesha. And adhyatmic klesha, one is miserable, one is always feeling inadequate, one is always feeling the need for something else. That's why men want to work harder and harder. Men are so ambitious. Ambitious for what? Because they are not satisfied with their present position. So that is adhyatmika klesha. Women are always decorating themselves, trying to look beautiful. That is also adhyatmika. Because one thinks one is not beautiful, one needs to decorate oneself nicely. Then when one is ambitious, then one has to suffer so many rivalries and enmities. So that is adhibhautik klesha. So one has to, take so many difficulties in this world. So one cannot even sleep properly. We have so many anxiety disorders, lifestyle diseases, heart problems, diabetes. What is all this? Caused by mental stress. According to the theories of homeopathy and even Ayurveda, all the diseases are originating in the mind. If one is experiencing excessive fear or anger, one's liver will become very weak. If one is experiencing excessive lamentation or sadness, one's kidneys will become weak. If one feels very lonely or very unhappy, one's lungs will become weak. So this way organs are attacked, and if one is completely miserable with his existence, one will eventually suffer from dementia, completely forgetting one's own existence. Excessive vata dosh will rise and brain will become inactive. So you see, the diseases actually arise from mental conditions. And why are these mental conditions arriving? Because of misconception, misidentification with the material body. Jivera Sarup hoy Krishnera Nityadas. When the living entity forgets this, then one has to suffer. Krishna bhuli se jeev anadi bahir mukha. Ateva maya tare deya sansara dukha. So one has to suffer because one has forgotten Krishna. As soon as one forgets Krishna, one has to think of Maya only. And Maya means one will have to suffer. Yeah, text 22. Karhi smachit kam madhu lavan vichivan yada paradar paradravyanya.
Karhismin
Karma
Vichivan
Yada
Yata Pardar Paradravyaya Varundhano.
Avarundhano ragya swamibhir va nihatah patatya apare niraye.
Avarudhano Raja Swamir Bhi Niraho Pataro Nirayo.
Pare Niraye.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, Dandavat Pranam.
Dandavat Pranam.
May I read, Prabhuji?
Yes, please.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Translation. The conditioned soul is sometimes attracted to the little happiness derived from sense gratification. Thus, he has illicit sex or steal another's property. At such a time, he may be arrested by the government or chastised by the woman's husband or protector. Thus, simply for a little material satisfaction, he falls into a hellish condition and is put into jail for rape, kidnapping, theft, and so forth. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. Jai Srila Prabhupada. Material life is such that due to indulgence of illicit sex, gambling, intoxication, and meat eating, the conditioned soul is always in a dangerous condition. Meat eating and intoxication excite the senses more and more, and the conditioned soul falls victims to omen. In order to keep omen, money is required, and to acquire money, one begs, borrows, or steals. Indeed, he commits abominable acts that cause him to suffer both in this life and the next. Consequently, illicit sex must be stopped by those who are spiritually inclined or who are on the path of spiritual realization. Many devotees fall down due to illicit sex. They may steal money and even fall down from the highly honored, renounced order. Then for a livelihood, they accept menial service and become beggars. It is therefore said in Shastras, Yanamai Tunadi Gruhamedi Sukham Hitucham. Materialism is based on sex, whether illicit or illicit. Sex is full of danger even for those who are addicted to household life. Whether one has to a license for sex or not, there is a great trouble. Bahudukha bhak. After one indulges in sex, many volumes of misery ensues. One suffers more and more in material life. A misery person cannot properly utilize the wealth he has. Similarly, a materialistic person misuses the human form. Instead of using it for spiritual emancipation, he used the body for sense gratification. Therefore, he is called a miser. Thank you, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna. Dandavat Pranam.
Hare Krishna. Dandavat Pranam. Karpanya doshopahat swabhavam. Arjun says in the Bhagavad Gita that, my dear Lord, I am inflicted by miserly weakness of the heart. So then, the second chapter of Gita, actually that's where just before the Gita starts, Arjun is surrendering to Krishna, saying, I am afflicted by miserly weakness of the heart. So Kripana is the opposite of Brahmana. Brahmana means udar, udar, and Kripana means one who is miserly, one who is like a hoarder, one who keeps hidden. So for one's own purposes. So the conditioned soul is sometimes attracted to the little happiness derived from sense gratification. Thus, he has illicit sex or steals another's property. Actually, the whole modern civilization is based around this. Actually, both the activities. If you see the politicians, the so-called businessmen, they are indulging in both these activities. They'll manipulate the banks, the markets, and they'll steal people's wealth. They'll create bank crashes or stock market crashes, and they'll steal away the hard-earned money, or they'll unnecessarily create inflation, make the things very expensive, and then make others pay for it. Like you see, government also will unnecessarily charge you this fees, this tax, that tax, so that the politicians can live happily. Politicians and their businessmen friends, they can accumulate wealth which is hard earned by others, and then indulge in sex life. Even old politicians, very old men, they are also engaged in so many sinful activities. So at such time, he may be just he has illicit sex or steal another property. At such a time, he may be arrested by the government or chastised by the woman's husband or protector. So we see that this is what is happening practically in this whole of this society. Illicit sex is always going on, illicit affairs here and there. Like when I was working in so many companies, I saw the same thing. Men and women both happily engaged in this. So actually one doesn't realize that not only in this life, but in the next also there is punishment for this. Heavy punishment. One has to suffer hellish conditions. If you see chapter 28 of this canto, you will see this descriptions. So chapter 26 actually, then you will see how dangerous this illicit sex life is. So even if it is illicit, within the married life, even that is dangerous. Because prayojan of grahastha ashram is children. And as soon as one has children, one has to suffer. First of all, the child has to become a pure devotee. If the child doesn't become a pure devotee, then the father and mother have to suffer. Then, even if one becomes a devotee, one has to still educate the child, take care of the child, and many, many years are spent like this. In this way, one has to suffer. So actually, this sex life is the basis of all material life. It's the basis of all suffering. Pumshama striya mithuni bhavam, tayor mitho hridaya granthim ahu. So this hard knot of heart which is formed. This hard knot which is formed due to sex attraction, that leads to so many miseries. And the biggest misery is that one is not able to remember Krishna. Because to maintain grahastha life, one has to work. Work means so many anxieties. So one is not able to remember Krishna. If mind is not peaceful, how will one remember Krishna? And therefore one has to suffer. So one has to be very, very careful. Actually, as soon as possible, a man should try to take sannyas, or he should remain a brahmachari. In any condition, see, the idea is not that we hate men or we hate women. What we are saying is that this union of male and female is detrimental to both men and women. Because this bodily identification becomes cemented when men and women associate with each other. And as soon as men and women come in contact with each other, immediately Krishna is forgotten, and one will remember only material nature. And one will prolong this miserable cycle of birth, old age, disease, and death. Hare Krishna. Yes, any questions or comments?
Hare Krishna. On the Indian scene, today itself, the government is coming with a amendment to the constitution. That 33% of seats will be given to the ladies. Reservation. Now this is going to be a big change. In fact, you take it, it is going to be sea changing. Very good the ladies are getting. Not against it. We educate our children also and all that. But now, when about 33% girls now will be in the market, doing normal activity like that of men, etc. That means they're going to be more in touch with the male people. And that means more chances of corruption and the illicit sex.
Yes, that is what it actually means.
How we see at this? And they always they say that no, ladies are not much educated, etc. So those are scheduled caste, scheduled tribe, this will further reservation for them. So I think we're creating the hellish thing ourselves. Kaliyug, we don't wait. Kaliyug is already coming. And it will come much before Bhagavan wants it to come.
Yeah, so actually, like, I have seen this also, Prabhu, like in all the companies I worked, especially media, like it was an accepted norm. This kind of illicit affairs between bosses and their subordinates, it was very acceptable.
Yeah, yeah.
And I mean, without that, it's actually like the norm. Those who don't have affairs, they don't go anywhere. Like there was one colleague of mine, she was very straightforward, very strong lady. She was a Punjabi Sikh lady. And the boss wanted to have affair with her and she refused. So he made her life miserable and eventually she had to leave the job. So this is like, the dangerous situation that we are creating. And we Indians we are literally the most foolish people on earth. That we have rejected our culture completely and we are accepting this kind of Malaysia culture and we are becoming very proud of it. So this is very, very dangerous. One has to understand.
What will happen? What will happen to children? Who will look after the children? Either they should go no marriage and no children and enjoy the life. That is okay. It's perfectly honest. But then you get married also. That who's going to look after the family? Your mother, father, old people, and the children. What is going to happen to the society?
Well, that is the miserable condition of our society. Really.
Of course, I know their cases. The girls are there who discharge all the duties, what are bona fide duties towards their children, parents, and all that. But they are very few. And then, when the new people come, and they will come new with more money and all the facilities, I think many chances they will go to the degraded positions.
Well, when the whole society is like this is bound to happen. So that's why, Vedic education is very important. But since there is no one left to teach anymore, the whole society, Prabhupada also used to say, he said, don't worry, don't think about the society in general. You have a life of just 40, 50 years. So you better focus on what you have to do.
Yeah.
So that's unfortunate reality that now the society has gone so far that we cannot now do anything about it. We really have to just, abandon everything and just, save ourselves.
You said, Prabhu, that's the right approach to do now.
Because we are not of the caliber of Srila Prabhupada that we can save anyone.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Yes. So we
Hare
continue
Krishna,
next.
Prabhuji. Hare
Yes.
Krishna, Prabhuji. One question or maybe a thought. Whenever we read these verses, we are talking about illicit sex or licit sex. They are talking about that illicit is worse. I understand it. But regardless of licit or illicit, they are bad anyways because they are leading to sense gratification. So फिर illicit के ऊपर इतना जोर क्यों है? Licit is equally bad, no?
So what is licit sex? Let's try to understand that. Licit sex means, Krishna is saying, that sex life which is not opposed to religion, I am that. So that means sex life which is only meant for progeny. That is also, sanctioned progeny in the sense that's progeny which is coming through Garbhadhan Samskar. Only that sex life is illicit. Even otherwise, even married life, sex life is illicit only. Any sex life which is just meant for enjoyment or progeny who is not going to be a devotee, that is in the same category as illicit sex. So that's why, once in 1968 or 69, Prabhupada was, I think, in San Francisco and he was giving a lecture. So somebody asked him, Swamiji, what about sex life? So Prabhupada was explaining. He said, yeah, sex life is permitted only once a month. That too for only having children. And if you have children, then there should be no more sex life. So there was, I think, Upendra Prabhu. And he said, oh, this sounds worse than celibacy. So Prabhupada said, yes, good boy. So you see, these are Vedic rules and regulations. If we don't follow, we will be punished. And most importantly, our consciousness will not be pure, will not be able to think of Krishna.
Yeah, they're talking about illicit all the time. Licit is equally bad too. So
Yes,
they're saying
so here Prabhupada is writing, Prabhupada is writing, sex is full of dangers even for those who are addicted to household life. Whether one has a license or not, there is great trouble. So Prabhupada is already writing that. Great trouble. If the child is not a devotee, if child turns out to be demonic, the mother and father will have to suffer the karma. So there is great trouble.
True. ठीक है जी, thank you Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
Yeah. So we continue text 23.
Yeah.
अथ च तस्माद् उभयथापि हि कर्मास्मिन् आत्मनः संसारवपन्नम् उदाहरन्ति.
अतः चित्
तस्मात् द्वयथापि हि कर्मस्मिन् आत्मनः संसारवपन्नम् उदाहरन्ति.
Translation. Learned scholars and transcendentalists therefore condemn the materialistic path of fruitive activity because it is the original source and breeding ground of material miseries, both in this life and in the next. Purport. Not knowing the value of life, karmis create situations whereby they suffer in this life and the next. Unfortunately, karmis are very attached to material sense gratification, and they cannot appreciate the miserable condition of material life, neither in this life nor in the next. Therefore, the Vedas enjoin that one should awaken to spiritual consciousness and utilize all his activities to attain the favor of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The Lord himself says in Bhagavad Gita 9.27, Yat karoshi yad ashnasi, yad juhosi dadasi yat tapasyasi kaunteya, tat purushva madabhama. O son of Kumti, all that you do, all that you eat, all that you offer, and give away, as well as all austerities that you may perform, should be done as an offering unto me. The results of all one's activities should be utilized not for sense gratification, but for the mission of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The Supreme Lord gives all information in Bhagavad Gita about the aim of life, and at the end of Bhagavad Gita, he demands surrender unto him. People do not generally like this demand, but one who cultivates spiritual knowledge for many births eventually surrenders unto the lotus feet of the Lord. Bahunam janmanam ante jnanavan mam prapadyate. Thank you. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Yad karoshi yad ashnasi yad juhoshi dadasi yat. All that you do, all that you eat, all that you offer and give away, as well as austerities that you may perform, should be done as an offering unto me. So Krishna, this is in the 9th chapter, 18th chapter, Krishna reiterates this. Sarva dharmana parityajya mama ekam sharanam vraja. So here he's saying, whatever you do, you dedicate to me. In the end, Krishna is saying, you just abandon everything and just surrender to me. It's the same thing. So if you see the flow of Bhagavad Gita, actually, Bhagavad Gita is very scientifically arranged. Actually, the message of Bhagavad Gita is repeated. From 2nd chapter to 9th chapter to 18th chapter, you see that what Krishna is saying is actually repeating himself, but in a different manner. He's deepening the message every time he repeats. So Bhaktivinoda Thakur says, Manasa deha geha jo kichu mora, arpilu tuya pade nanda kishora. So that should be the mood. Everything is actually meant for Krishna. Aham sarvasya prabhava mattah sarvam pravartate. Krishna is saying, everything is coming from Krishna and everything is resting on Krishna. So there is no question of not being away from Krishna, actually. This so-called materialism is actually nothing but a forgetfulness of Krishna. We just have to correct that. As soon as we think of dedicating everything to Krishna, the situation immediately becomes perfect. So karmi means someone who is addicted to his own enjoyment. Atmendriya priti vancha tare kahe kaam. Krishnendriya priti vancha dhare premanam. So, just doing activities for oneself, that is kama. But doing it for Krishna, that is prema. So doing everything. So here Krishna is explaining the secret of that prema. Yad karoshi yad ashnasi. Whatever you do it as an offering unto me. So, but when one is engaged in sense gratification, the modes of Rajoguna and Tamoguna become very strong. Then one is not able to move away. In the 3rd chapter of Gita, Arjuna is asking the same question. So how is it that one is impelled to act sinfully, even against his own wishes? So Krishna is explaining that it is only due to material nature, kama. This is lust only, which is the all-devouring enemy of the soul. So in the very beginning, curb this lust with the sword of knowledge. So we have to study the scriptures very nicely, meditate on the meaning of each verse very carefully, see what the Acharya is saying, and we'll be able to overcome this lust. Then we'll not fall into this condition which is described in this chapter. Hare Krishna. Yes, any questions or comments?
Prabhuji, one other question, but this might be a stupid one. Here, most of the writings, a lot of writings that Prabhupada ji has, he's writing a lot of his own realizations too. So here it says, people do not generally like this demand, but one who cultivates spiritual knowledge for many births eventually surrenders unto the lotus feet of Lord. In Prabhupada ji's case, we see that one life was enough. He was a grihastha, he realized what's going on, and then he's like, enough, I'm going to move on. Was this his realization too, that many births, eventually someone will surrender? It will take many births.
Yes. Prabhupada said, generally you will have to take few births.
जी जी नहीं, ये प्रभुपाद जी की भी realization ऐसी थी कि तो प्रभुपाद जी की जब लाइफ पढ़ो तो प्रभुपाद जी तो just one birth was enough.
Prabhupada said one moment is enough. Prabhupada said one moment is enough to surrender to Krishna. Prabhupada said one moment. If you realize what is the nature of this world and you surrender to Krishna, then one moment is enough. You will be purified immediately. But generally it takes a few births because Prabhupada said, it will take you 300 births to realize that sex life is disgusting. So, but if one can realize in this birth itself, then why? So it's not like a rule that, even if you are pure, you will have to take births. It's not like that. You can be purified, but it depends on how you take this message.
ठीक है जी. Thank you, Roji. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Yes. So, any other questions or comments? Okay, then we stop here today. So, thank you very much. Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Tomorrow we'll continue the reading of this chapter.
Thank you, Prabhu. Thank you, Prabhu.
Thank you, Prabhuji.
Thank you.
Hare
Hare Krishna.
Prabhupada ji ki jai. Thank you, ji.
Prabhuji.
Pranam. Hare Krishna.